Hello everybody, my name is Pixie People. Welcome back to the channel. Welcome to the channel if you're new. And as promised, video Monday. I'm recording this Sunday, just to remind you. Anyways, no really need for introductions. Let's get right into the video. I'll see y'all Saturday. Bye. Continuing our story, we see after Deku has gotten home, after barely beating All Might, not even barely beating him. So he's just sitting with an ice pack on his head, waiting for, the next day. And he actually falls asleep, and the next day, he goes to school, and Aizawa announces that they're going to go to the forest arc. Not announces, but he says that all the people that pass the final exams will be able to go to the forest arc. And then he says, and so will the people that failed, with everyone being confused. With Aizawa saying that she will be doing extra studies though, and will be missing out on some things. So everyone in the back is like sighing in annoyance, but they're just happy they get to go. And after they all get on the bus, Bakugo and Deku talk about how it felt like All Might was completely holding back on them. Not even with the weights on, he was still holding back. And Bakugo just says that he better have not. So Aizawa was driving the bus, and eventually they park and get off the bus, with Deku noting, "This is not the forest area." So he looks around to see one of the teacher ladies, or whatever her name is, I don't care, Miss Cat, doesn't matter. It does, but I can't remember. Anyways, as she talks, Deku kind of senses something's a bit off here. So he actually steps a bit back, grabbing Bakugo and pulling him slightly back too. And as she's wrapping up her speech, she crouches down really quickly, touches the ground, and goes to collapse it. Which he actually does, but both Bakugo, because of Deku, and Deku dodge it because Deku was too far back for it to make them fall. So Aizawa, looking at Deku, saying, "Good intuition thing. Good instincts. You gotta ride the bus." And then he actually pushes Bakugo down because he could tell Deku caught and pulled Bakugo back. So Deku sits on the bus alone with Aizawa, getting there way earlier than everyone else. So he gets to meet Koda a bit more early, and instead of Koda hitting him in the wee, he kind of sees Deku's demeanor and kind of feels like he shouldn't swing. So Deku just takes a seat inside and just drinks some water and waits for everyone to get there. It takes a while before that, considering there's minus a person there. A strong person there. So after Deku hears some commotion, he walks out with actually a lot of water bottles, and he actually just throws them to his classmates, with Bakugo actually grabbing the water bottle and popping it with his raw strength, with Deku noting the furious rage in Bakugo's eyes. But he actually did pull out another water bottle because he knew Bakugo would do that. So Bakugo grabs it and actually opens it correctly. And yeah, so that night they have the dinner that the teachers prepare, and the teachers explain that they'll have to make their own the next day. So that goes off pretty well, and Deku still saves Koda from that giant fall. I'm not going to say what scene it was, but it was a giant fall. Anyways, then he gets the rundown of why Kota doesn't like heroes, because when the whole of Class 1A showed up, Kota released his whole feelings by punching Ida in the dick this time, instead of Deku. Afterwards, Deku just goes to sleep, kind of pondering on Kota's, life, and realizing how depressing that is. And the next day, they do some hero training with Deku basically working on his body more, because he is still pretty skinny compared to his original self. Because he's so used to just using strength and speed that he barely uses his own actual muscles. And eventually it gets to the night, and they all sit around the table, and Deku sees the lack of Kota with one of the teachers, I'm gonna say the man guy, walks up and tells Deku, could he please go look for him? And he pulls out a bowl of curry so Deku can give it to him. And Deku nods his head, grabs the bowl, and walks over to where the guy points, usually where Kota goes off, which is the cliff. So Deku just floats up, more like flies up, and puts his foot on the thing, seeing Kota sitting on the cliff, with Deku sitting next to him, putting the curry by him, saying to Kota why he's up here. With Kota saying he doesn't want to talk, with Deku saying we don't have to if you don't want to. But Kota takes a deep breath and says that he wishes his family would have just left hero work and just focused on him. With Deku saying that it's fair to think that, but his mom and dad really cared about people and cared about him. And while Deku is explaining this, Muscular goes to swing a giant fist into Kota's head, but Deku uses strength and grabs it, and barely holding Kota up. So Kota sprints away in fear, with the bowl of curry spilling over off the cliff. Then Muscular starts to make Deku bend a knee, and then Muscular's fist comes from the side, hitting Deku's rib, pushing him into the ground, skidding him, actually making him bounce up for a sec. Then Deku turns on flight, flies over, it turns on durability, and basically spins into Muscular like a cannonball, which pushes Muscular pretty far back. And Muscular regenerates all that muscle that he just lost from the cannonball and cackles, saying to Deku that was nothing. With Deku retorting, saying that's not it. With then a buttload of clones coming off of Deku, this replacing flight. Then they all rush at Muscular, who just destroys every single one. Of course, most of them hitting Muscular in the face and kicking his shins, and eventually all of them get destroyed, of course, except for one, which is the actual Deku, who is flying upwards after he turns off strength. Then he turns on Crush and crushes Muscular's muscles, but he keeps regenerating too fast for Deku to use it to its fullest, and actually gets jumped on and actually suplexed into the ground. But Deku uses shock waves to push all Muscular back, which he just starts rapidly spamming with speed. And then Deku uses flight to do cannonball again, which actually cracks a tooth out of Muscular's mouth. Then Deku uses basically like Sonic and starts just hitting a buttload of cannonballs on Muscular's body, which starts to really weaken him, and he takes a knee, spitting blood. saying, "That's all you got?" And then he riles up a big punch with like a buttload of muscles on it. Actually, some of the muscles taking off from his actual body and punching Deku in the stomach, which actually makes him cough out main amounts of blood. Then Muscular basically uses muscle tendons to basically grip onto Deku, bounce Deku into the air. Then he punches Deku's arm, breaking it. Then Deku's limped arm starts to jangle, but Deku decides that's not it. So he turns on strength and shockwaves quietly and tells Muscular that it's not over, with Muscular saying, "I'd hope not." Then he flies, the Muscular goes zooming in with all of his muscles, basically going as like a jagged motion. But Deku throws a punch, which actually goes in between most of Muscular's muscles, going actually to his chest, punching Muscular's chest, which is where his heart is, which actually makes it stop for a moment, which knocks Muscular out because of lack of oxygen. So Muscular falls over unconscious. Then Deku takes a little squat for a second until he realizes that Class 1A is out there. And there's no way there wasn't just one villain out here. This is definitely planned. So Deku gets out, uses heal on his arm. By the way, I should probably mention this, but heal isn't like an instant thing. It takes like a minute for it to work. So it takes a minute until it fully heals. It basically makes a loud crack, 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 crack back into place. Then Koda's crying because Deku saved him, like a real hero would. Then Deku grabs Koda by the collar, and they start flying over to where Aizawa is, which they go over there, and Deku puts Koda where Aizawa is, and Aizawa decides that he'll probably just keep the kid safe. So Deku turns on flight and shockwaves to fly around the area, with him finding Spinner and Magna, who are fighting them all through the two other cat persons that haven't been kidnapped and the quirk stolen. But Deku just uses shockwaves to knock Magna out with one punch. And the same with Spinner, but with like an uppercut, which actually makes him spin into the air, which twice looks up and sees. So twice calms in to Korigiri that Spinner and Magna are out. So Korigiri takes them in, with Magna being pulled in while Deku isn't looking, and Spinner being taken in while he's falling. So Deku looks around to realize they're not there anymore, knowing this is the League of Villains, because the Korigiri, the teleporting thing. So Deku starts flying around even more to see Compress running away from Todoroki. Deku also seeing Tokiyami slamming through the forest. He gets an idea. So he flies over to Dark Shadow, really taking over Tokiyami, and Dark Shadow, in a blind rage, goes to slam towards Deku, with Deku actually slowing down so Dark Shadow can keep up. So eventually, as Compress is trying to run away, he looks over to see Tokiyami, and he gets hit by Deku with basically a tackle, and basically pushes Compress through like 50 trees, almost making him go unconscious, but he holds out. And as he's about to touch Deku, Todoroki shoots a giant ice blast to catch Compress's hand. So Compress, instead of, compressing Deku, he compresses the iceberg. So Deku then lets go of Korigiri, with Compress bouncing off the floor with the marbles he had. So as they're looking through the marbles, Compress, with like barely an inch of his consciousness, he snaps his finger, making all of them open up, which actually shoots out a buttload of jagged rocks and metal pieces. Then Baku's like in there. Then Dabi shows up to basically push both Deku and Todoroki off. And Baku blows himself out, but before he can, fully get up, compresses Baku again. Because the fire made Compress heat up and give him an adrenaline boost. Then Compress knocks himself out again by pushing himself. So Dabi picks up Compress and the marble and heads through a portal, with Todoroki shooting an ice blast trying to get in. But Dabi keeps melting his ice as soon as he tries to do that. So Dabi enters the portal with everyone else, and Baku gets kidnapped. And Deku then flips out like he does in the original, and then he walks over to see if everyone's alright, with Aizawa saying what happened to Baku, and they explain what happened to Baku, with Aizawa cursing himself in rage. After Aizawa says that they're going to send out a search party to help the class calm down, Deku doesn't really care, and he's going to go save Baku himself, with obviously Kirishima, Deku, Todoroki, and Yazurozu, because you got that thing on the Nomu, and Ida with a reluctant fine, just because Pio's Deku won. So they head out and get on those. They don't do the cosplay thing anymore. They just get to where the League of Villains are, and they look around to see what's happening. And of course, the heroes do their whole coup, and then the explosion happens with the group, the 1A group, looks around and then feels an immense pressure to realize All For One's there. Sorry about my cat. And All For One looks around to see where Baku is, but All Might flies in to fight All For One, with All For One cackling to himself. Then basically the All Might versus All For One fight happens, and Deku flies in with shockwaves to grab Baku, and he uses shockwaves to basically keep the League of Villains off himself. So he straight up, with Todoroki shooting an ice blast, with Ida using his blasters to fly over, grabbing Bakugo off Deku, with Ochako making him float. Then Bakugo and Ida land on a building and run off it afterwards to run over to the crowd to watch the big television, with Deku landing, actually flying away, but All For One knocks him straight down with a shock wave, making him fly to the ground, shocking Deku because he didn't know his quirks could be overpowered like that. So Deku looks around to see the League of Villains, and Deku just uses a giant shockwave to push him off, with the shockwaves of All Might and All For One making them eventually all go unconscious, including Deku, who flies into a building. And basically the fight of All For One and All Might go the exact same way, and All Might knocks out All For One. Then Deku wakes up in the hospital in a state of shock, but he gets up to look around to see that Bakugo is safe and sound. And I think that's where I'm going to leave things right now. Hope you liked the video. like, subscribe, hit the post notification bells if you enjoyed the video. If not, well, you already watched the video, so that's good enough. See you later.